Welcome into Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf here, and the New York Knicks beat the Brooklyn Nets in the so-called Battle of New York, 121-102. That should be huge news today and should be the top story. Unfortunately, after the game, the top story came, which is that Mitchell Robinson may be out for the season, and the Knicks have applied for a disabled player exception for the rest of the year. So I'll get into all that, what that means, plus recap the good game. Don't worry. Next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Knicks, and I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that notification bell on YouTube or the auto download function on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And your New York Knicks beat the Brooklyn Nets 121-102. But unfortunately, I have to lead with something different because I think this has much larger implications on the Knicks season overall, which is unfortunate. But shortly after the game, Shams from Athletic tweets out that the Knicks have applied to the NBA for a disabled player exception worth $7.8 million as the franchise projects center Mitchell Robinson will miss the rest of the season. Sources tell The Athletic. Major development as Robinson had ankle surgery last week. So obviously this is a huge deal. We thought that Mitch was only going to be out 8 to 10 weeks based off the initial reporting and what the Knicks themselves said with that ankle surgery, which of course would have put him back in action end of January, mid-February maybe, and given him a solid 2-month runway to get ready for the playoffs and all that stuff. Now this is a much different animal. Unfortunately, this is a very different situation where now they apparently think that he's going to miss the entire season if they're applying for this disabled player exception, unless I guess if the Knicks just fully don't understand what it means to get one of these disabled player exceptions and they kind of get denied by the league if the league determines that Mitch doesn't meet the criteria for this. But first off, let's just get into like what a DPE is and what it means for the Knicks and for Mitch and everything else. And so a DPE is only granted if a player's injury is deemed to be season ending, which doesn't really, again, jive with that initial 8 to 10 week timetable. But apparently now he's projected to be out 5 or 6 months or more, at least if the Knicks are applying for this. You would think so. So per CBA FAQ, which if any of you ever see a term you don't understand on Twitter or whatever, like this has been one of the greatest resources for me over the years, just CBAFAQ.com, put together by Larry Kuhn, former writer for ESPN. So if the Knicks want to get the exception, the NBA's panel of doctors need to review Mitch's case and then deem that Mitch is, quote, substantially more likely than not to be able to, or more likely than not to be unable to play through the following June 15th. Sorry, I stumbled over my words a little bit there. But yeah, it's a pretty big bummer there. And I really feel for Mitch in this case. I don't know. I feel more of a connection to Mitch as far as these Knicks players than almost anyone on this team. It's pretty rare that you have a Knick that makes it 6 seasons with the team. And so the fact that he's been with the Knicks for as long as he has, and he's such a character, and he's really worked on himself every single year and gotten better, and to the point where last year and then this year, he's a dominant defensive force. Like, I really think that he had a chance for an all-defense team this year. And clearly, I mean, if he had come back in 2 months and the Knicks defense had been what it's been recently, and he comes back and it went back to the level it was when he was playing, I think he would have almost been a lock for a all defense, even with 2 months missed. But he's a good dude too. I don't know. It sucks that his injury history keeps sort of derailing positive momentum in his career. Some of it with freak injuries, and then this with the ankle, where it's like it kind of came out of nowhere because we didn't even realize that he had this serious of an ankle ailment until he needed to get surgery on it. So if he is out the rest of the year, if this is correct and the Knicks get granted this exception, like that really sucks for him, man. I really feel for Mitch. But as far as what the Knicks get, if they get this 7.8 million disabled player exception, it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. So they get half of Mitch's salary. It's the way this thing works. It's either half the player's salary or the mid-level exception, which this year was like 10-ish million, I think. So half of Mitch's salary, you get the lesser of the two. So in this case, if it's like a max level player, you get a mid-level exception basically. But if it's a player that makes less than that, then you get half their salary. So 7.8 million would be half of Mitch's salary, since he makes about 16 million a season. Basically what they can do with that, they can either spend that money straight up on a 1-year deal, or they could trade for a player on an expiring contract specifically to fill out that spot with a little extra bumper of $100,000 to make the math work there, meaning that they don't have to send any matching salary out. So it's almost like a traded player exception where they can just absorb a player directly into that exception and, have someone on their team. But of course they still, it's not like they'll just get that for free. They have to give up assets of some sort, be it, draft picks or just some money going back to the other team, which the Knicks almost never trade, just their cash. So that would be nice to see. But I think that raises the question of who the Knicks could even find with this money, because the market isn't really stacked with bigs at this point. I think the expiring options they could trade for, ironically, would have been headlined by the guy on their team that's starting for them now. Isaiah Hartenstein is definitely the best player that fits roughly into that $8 million salary box. So, it's a little annoying there, I guess, from a Knicks perspective. Like, oh, we got this great $8 million thing. Well, we already have the best backup big on an $8 million contract in the league who's going to start for us for the rest of the season now, probably. So yeah, I guess that rules that out. But I pulled together a few names just with really brief thoughts. Like, I feel like Gavin and I will probably get on and do a episode together where we break this down and go through the options a little more in depth. If the Knicks are actually granted this disabled player exception, which is not a guarantee, that these things have been denied in the past. So we'll see if the Knicks even get it first off. But just a few names that I quickly skimmed together. Bismack Biyombo on Memphis. He's a journeyman, plays defense and rebounds pretty well. Memphis might consider selling off some pieces soon. Like, he's actually getting some decent minutes for them at the moment, but they might consider selling off some guys soon. Even with Ja back, they fell into such a huge hole without him there that I don't know. They might just consider this season a wash and just be willing to sell off some of the less important pieces like the Biambos of the world sooner than later. Mike Muscala on Washington, another journeyman, not a typical Tibbs big. I should have mentioned Biyombo, definitely a typical Tibbs big, but Mike Muscala, not quite what Tibbs looks for, but he rebounds okay. Not going to provide you that defense that Tibbs wants at that spot, but gives you a new wrinkle of having some shooting as well. So if the Knicks want to have a guy they can legitimately throw a different look out there with, Muscala is probably that guy, so he could be worth looking at. Andre Drummond from Chicago. I mean, he definitely gets rebounds. Unfortunately, I think his game is a little Enes Kanter-ish, which is sort of horrifying as a Knicks fan. But he's been rumored to be a Knicks since like forever, for the last like 5, 6, 7 years. He is a local dude. Went to UConn. He's from the area. So, I mean, in that regard, maybe a name to look at. I don't know. I don't know if I'm super sold on Andre Drummond, but they could do worse, I guess. So there's that. JaVale McGee on Sacramento. I think JaVale McGee is maybe finally kind of over the hill at this point, but as a backup to Hartenstein, for 15 minutes a game, again, they could probably do worse. It's not like they have a huge market to choose from here, short of going for a better player. But in that case, they probably won't be using this traded player exception for that, because the salary would most likely be higher than what they could do. So maybe JaVale McGee is a serviceable option. Similar vibes, Robin Lopez, except for you get that once a Knick, always a Knick reunion there, which would be nice. I don't know that it's super likely that Milwaukee trades him just because of the Brook Lopez factor. They like I think Milwaukee likes keeping their brother pairs together. They have Thanasis Antetokounmpo there as well with Giannis. So, I think that they're less than likely to do that, but I don't know. It would make a nice reunion. He's definitely rebounds the ball well. He's probably fallen. I'd be lying if I said I've watched a ton of Robin Lopez the last couple of years. I would imagine he's probably fallen off on defense a little bit, but again, for 15 minutes a night, I think the Knicks could do worse. And they could get a guy and honestly give him sort of a redemption story because he played on not a fun Knicks team when he played here. The 1 year he was here, so hopefully they can get give him a chance to have a more fun experience on the Knicks if they would get him. And then as free agents go, I just threw a few veteran names together that stand out to me. They're still on the market. Gorgie Jang, still on the market. Kem Birch, who had a pretty impactful couple of years with Toronto, but sort of fell off a little bit, but he's available. Montrezl Harrell, who's definitely not a Tibbs big, definitely has Enes Kanter energy to his the way that he plays, but still available. And a familiar name again, Nerlens Noel, is available as a veteran option. So guys to maybe look at there. Although I doubt that any of those guys mentioned would cost more than a veteran's minimum contract anyway. And then an intriguing name. I'm just going to throw it out there because I know that Gavin and I covered him a lot going into the draft and stuff. And he was technically drafted with a pick that the Knicks traded away on draft night. But Kai Jones definitely had some stuff going on this offseason. If you watched his, what was it, Instagram Reels, TikToks, whatever he was doing, seemed like he was going through it this offseason. So hopefully he's getting better in that regard. And I don't know if the Knicks would go through an assessment and say, hey, we think this guy's all right. We should go for him. Then I would trust them. And he definitely has an intriguing skill set and like was very enticing as a draft prospect to Gavin and I. So maybe a guy worth looking at if the Knicks feel like they've got it. But anyway, let's get on to happier things. Let's talk about this 121-102 win by the Knicks. Isaiah Hartenstein had a warrior performance. Julius Randle once again just absolutely cooked the other team, and Donte DiVincenzo had a great game. Jalen Brunson had sort of a low key game for him compared to some of his scoring outbursts lately, but lots to talk about with this Knicks Nets game when we get back from our quick little break here. But first, I just have to remind you all that today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at eBay Motors, and they've teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. So whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh has picked out on this week's eBay Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. And I already went into Tari Eason earlier this week, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give the nod to Grayson Allen here. I had him actually for a little bit on my 9-cat league team earlier this year. Josh notes with Bradley Beal out again, Allen should see strong minutes and a nice increased usage role for the next few weeks. I agree. He was putting up really solid numbers without Bradley Beal there. Was clearly heavily relied upon, as a 3-point shooter, which will help you out in that category. And then, of course, helps you in points. Field goal percentage wise, though, he was shooting pretty well overall, too. So he was being efficient with whatever looks he was getting. Plus, he generates some steals and blocks because he is a bit of a defensive menace. So I like Grayson Allen. I like that pickup for sure. And I think that he's I think he's an intriguing option to throw out there. But Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit, and that's the same with your vehicle. So if you have if you have a personal experience with trying to get parts for your car, it can be kind of annoying. I've gone through this myself, where I've had to go to an auto parts store and not love the experience because I just kind of want to get my parts and get out of there and get them delivered to me in an efficient way. And eBay Motors really helps do that. If you've ever shopped on eBay, it's a pretty easy experience. I use it for sneakers too. I'm a big sneaker guy, so they have their, not to plug that in the middle of an eBay Motors ad, but they have their sneaker authenticity guarantee too. But they have the same thing for their auto parts, which is great, which you wouldn't necessarily think of right away when you think of eBay. But It's not all just people offloading sports card collections and stuff. There's auto parts on there, and they offer a guaranteed fit promise, which helps make it so that you can have exactly what you want. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly with brake kits, LED headlights, roof racks, bumpers, whatever your baby needs. eBay Motors has it. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers, eligible items only, exclusions apply. All right, and I'm back in to keep talking through this big Knicks win. Well, I'll start talking through this big Knicks win, I guess I should say. I only briefly mentioned that the Knicks won 121 to 102 over the Brooklyn Nets, which is a huge win for them. But this was a I think just like the best of what you can see from the Knicks in this game. Just from the defensive perspective, from the offensive perspective, it felt in many ways similar to before Mitch went down, like the amount of impact that Isaiah Hartenstein had in this game. So big difference in this game. Isaiah Hartenstein draws the start, which made I think all the difference in the world. The Knicks got out to a huge lead because I think that he just had this like Mitch like impact on the defensive end where he was the intimidator on the inside. He made Mikal Bridges like scared for his life early in this game and made it so that he did not feel comfortable going inside. And that's one of the biggest scoring players on the opposing side. So, if you could take one of the opponent's stars out of the game, you're already doing something great. Now, granted, the Knicks also, that they sort of counted on the Nets missing some threes, and like the Nets made a decent amount of open threes though, so that's not even fully as bad as it has been for the Knicks in the past, where it's like, oh, they let up a ton of open threes and they were giving up the paint. Like, this is why they just got 140 dropped on them. They gave up some open threes, but it seemed somewhat strategic again, which they tend to do at their best, where they can sort of game plan not getting the ball into the wrong person's hands to shoot a three. And of course, every NBA team is going to be able to generate a number of threes throughout a game, regardless. But really getting in Mikal Bridges' head and even getting in Cam Thomas's head a little bit was huge, I think, for the Knicks in this game and for establishing the pace. Isaiah Hartenstein ends with 2 points, 10 boards, 3 assists, 2 blocks, and the 2 blocks again, I think, really underscores defensive impact. He was just a total intimidator on the inside. Also just gobbled up rebounds when it was needed. I mean, he did exactly what the Knicks needed in this game. It was, again, very Mitchell Robinson-esque, the way that he was able to control the paint and control the boards and just sort of in general uh, dictate what the Nets did in this game as much as what the Knicks did. He also took a really nasty shot from Mikal Bridges to the face in the first half, which busted his lip open pretty bad. He was like straight up like they they were like, oh, I guess he took a little hit there. I had to watch the Nets broadcast, by the way. It's really annoying. I get both MSG and Yes, and so I have a DVR set so that if I get home a little late or whatever, I can start the game, after I get home and then kind of just fast forward through commercials. I got the Yes broadcast. My DVR always does that. Very annoying. But anyway, I was watching the Yes broadcast and they were like, "Oh, it looks like you got him a little bit there." And then all of a sudden they show a close up of Hartenstein. He's like bleeding on the floor, and they're like, "Oh, I guess that was a little worse than we thought." And then proceeded to defend Mikal Bridges and say like, when Brunson missed a technical free throw for Bridges flailing his arm into Hartenstein's face, they're like, "Oh, ball don't lie, I guess." Shut up, stupid Nets announcers. Anyway, Isaiah Hartenstein came back before the end of the first half, all stitched up. You could tell it was definitely. I mean, he got like a big gash on that lip, um, but he was able to finish the game no problem. So honestly, I think if the Knicks can get this level, to go back to what we were talking about in the first segment of being able to potentially use this disabled player exception and get a different player on board and whatever. If the Knicks can get this level of production from Isaiah Hartenstein that they've gotten for the last 2 games and get a better backup, which like sorry Taj Gibson, I don't know. I don't think that I would want to count on Taj Gibson for 15 minutes a game anymore. He could be the third center if Jericho Sims is out for a while or whatever, but I think they need a legit backup center. Anyway, if they have Hartenstein playing at this level and they get a better backup, I think they might just be all right. Because Hartenstein seems like he's hitting a new level as well. And I'm sure that with more time with the starters, he's going to get more comfortable, and things are going to go pretty good for him. Speaking of things going good for people, Julius Randle, 26 points, 7 boards, 4 assists, only 1 turnover, which I always feel the need to point out. That's a big category for him. And a 4-to-1 assist to turnover is fantastic, and honestly better in many ways than if he gets like 7 assists and 5 turnovers. He also shot 9 of 20 and only shot, or only, he shot 0-4 from three. He did not make a single three. So I don't know. I think it was another night where Randall didn't really have it going from three, but it just didn't seem to matter. He just really bullied the crap out of the Nets. Like, he got into their chest, he got all the way to the hoop, finished there, and he's been doing that to pretty much every team lately. But it's especially gratifying seeing him do that to the Nets, I guess. He also bodied Dinwiddie at one point. Speaking of things that are gratifying, Dinwiddie tried to flop. That didn't go well. He didn't get the call. It's always just oddly satisfying seeing Spencer Dinwiddie get knocked on his butt. So that was cool. But Randall also had it going in transition, which the whole team did. He caught a great pass from iHeart in transition at one point for a dunk. Love to see that. And all in all, just I thought that Julius was playing with the right level of energy, like played within the flow of the offense, which is awesome, and didn't seem to force anything in this game. I mean, he's been playing some really, really high level basketball lately. So great to see that from him. But then we also had some really high level basketball from Donte DiVincenzo. Jalen Brunson got to sort of take a night off from being the alpha scorer in this one and distribute a bit, which was great. Emmanuel quickly had a really fun game. RJ Barrett also had a solid, if slightly unspectacular game, but worth noting. So I'll talk about all that in the next segment. But first, a word from our sponsors. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And whether or not your family gives gifts during the holidays, you get to define how you give to yourself. It could be really helpful to learn positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. And therapy can really empower you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma or anything like that. We all go through things in our daily lives that can just make living life harder, and especially this time of year. I mean, the holidays are fun once you get to them, but they're stressful in the lead up, being like, oh, did I do enough? Am I going to see enough people? Did I get this person a good enough gift? Whatever the case may be, a lot of little things can add up, and it just kind of has a piling effect in your brain. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, I think you should probably give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's dedicated to being convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. And it's the season of giving, so give yourself what you need with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba. All right, and I'm back in to finish talking through this Knicks win. So let's talk about Donte DiVincenzo, man. 23 points, 9 of 15 from the field, 5 of 10 from three, 8 boards, 3 steals. This was just the quintessential Donte DiVincenzo experience, I feel like, in this game. He was the absolute best version of himself. He hit his threes at a fantastic clip, was, just absolute smooth as silk shooting those threes. 5 of 10. I mean, 50%. You'll take that all day and tomorrow. He disrupted passing lanes like a madman, like he always does. That led to those 3 steals, and was taking that and running in transition, both as a passer and as a scorer. He mostly got his opportunities as a play finisher. A lot of feeds from Jalen Brunson, which we'll talk about in a sec. But, he also kind of, even on the ones where he was the ultimate finisher of the play, he was getting the ball moving the right way. So, like on one of them, he got the steal, or perhaps it was a long rebound. I forget exactly, but he grabbed it, got going in transition. Brunson starts going as well. He kicks it to Brunson. Brunson gets it back to him, finishes a layup. I know that every broadcast will bring it up till the end of the season, but very Villanova-esque. It definitely was. They were channeling their college selves there. Brunson and DiVincenzo, and also Hart, who did some of that in this game as well. So just a fantastic performance from DiVincenzo. I'm starting to think that this just is who Donte DiVincenzo is. Like, I feel really good about him being in the starting lineup now. We've had now, I don't know, 2 weeks since he got moved in there. I want to say a sample of like 6 games or so, and it's been it's been very encouraging watching DiVincenzo in the starting lineup. I think that he is just exactly what this team needs there, because he can have those games where he's not going to take many shots and it doesn't seem to affect anything with him. But then every once in a while, he's going to take a bunch of shots, like in this game, and he's going to make a ton of them and make a huge impact. No matter what, he's always going to make that impact with playing off the ball, with playing off the ball both on offense and defense. But I was speaking specifically about defense. Getting those steals, those deflections, playing good enough man-on-man defense that he's not going to be actively giving up points that way. So I love this game from him. I also love this game from Jalen Brunson, who went with 16 points, 8 assists, 7 rebounds, shot 6 of 15. So not his best shooting night, but he sort of understood that, which is good. And so he just kind of switched into distributor Brunson, which I love that. I think that he recognized, like, oh, this team has a good scheme for me. They were closing in on him quite a bit, which why wouldn't you? Brunson's been one of the hottest scorers in the NBA for the last month or so. So they were closing in on him, trying to wall off the paint from Brunson, trying to make life uncomfortable for him. And so he just said, "All right, well, I'm just going to kick out shooters like all day," and did that. And that was between transition and just getting inside, drawing the defense, kicking out to open guys in the corner. Sometimes that was DiVincenzo. I think once or twice it was Josh Hart. He just managed to completely dictate the flow of the game that way and come up with nearly a triple double, which should note the rebounding is really great too. Getting those long rebounds, being in position for those. So he managed to do a lot of that as well. I like these more low key nights from Brunson. I think that it gives 2 benefits. One is he works on his distributing, which I think was maybe the only, like, as a lead guard, is maybe one of the only things that I felt like he still needed to work on last year, because it's like being a pure distributor is very different than being like a scoring guard that can also pass. So these games, it's like he switched into full on Chris Paul like distributor mode, where he's just breaking down the D and looking to get his teammates involved pretty much the entire game. So I love that, because that's a valuable skill to have once you reach like the playoffs or whatever. And there might be some games where teams give an inordinate amount of attention to Jalen Brunson, and he needs to sort of trust everybody else to get the scoring done. So that's thing one. Thing two, I like that Brunson gets to take a night off every once in a while. I like that he gets to sort of not have to be the alpha scorer and can recharge his batteries a little bit, because it's a long season, and the Knicks just got off a long road trip and everything else. So that was very good to see as well. Speaking of guys that help take the scoring load off, though, Emmanuel quickly ends this game with 19 points, shoots 7 of 12, 4 of 6 from 3, and 2 assists. This, like, as scoring games go for Emmanuel quickly, had almost everything you could want to see. I don't know if he hit a floater. I forget if there was a floater mixed in there, but I didn't really care because I didn't necessarily want to see floaters. I loved all those threes. He made them in a variety of different ways. So first one makes it from just like 5 feet behind the 3-point line up top, banks it in, which was kind of hilarious. And he got a kick out of that, was laughing about it. So that was 3-1, but then the rest of them just like step backs, and one where he's falling out of bounds while he's making a three. I mean, just a phenomenal shooting performance from him. But maybe the most important thing to me is that he was getting all the way inside and finishing. And I think that quickly was getting away from this a little bit. Again, it's sort of a bad tendency of his, just like every player has certain things that they come out doing at the beginning of the season, or every team has things they come out doing at the beginning of the season, then sort of trail off as the year goes on. And quickly this year, like early in the season, was getting inside, finishing that way. And then that sort of fell off the last few weeks, I feel like. And it seemed like he's been more interested again in sort of stranding guys on his hip and going for floaters and stuff like that, which I know is a staple of his game when he needs it. But I love it so much more when he just gets all the way inside, powers in, tries to draw a foul. He's gotten really good with his touch. Like, even if he does get fouled, he has the touch to potentially make that and get a 3-point play. But then if he doesn't get the foul call too, then he also still just has touch to make that bucket and not make it a wasted possession. I don't know. I hope he does it so much more. He did it in this game, and I loved seeing it. So I hope that he embraces the fact that he is as good as he is, getting all the way inside. Then we got RJ Barrett with 14 points, 5 boards, 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block, 5-11 shooting, 0 of 1 from 3. And I mean, compared to all the other people I just mentioned, a little ho-hum for RJ, but I mean, he was pretty efficient. Like 5-11 is solid. You'll take that. He didn't force it when, I think he felt like he knew he didn't necessarily have the 3 going in this game, but he certainly helped the effort out getting in transition. I thought he played pretty good defense. I think he was overall positive in this game. So I would love to see him start getting hot from 3 again and start scoring like he was at the beginning of the season. But if this is the sort of game that he can put out there consistently instead of the ones where he shoots like 5 of 17 instead of 5 of 11, then I would really like that. And I'd also, I appreciate that he didn't just go out there and try to jack a ton of threes when he clearly hasn't had that lately. So hopefully he'll just have a real good practice day, a real good shoot around one day and say, okay, I know the 3 is back now. I'm going to go out there and jack them up. But in the meantime, let's not like tank anything for the offense while the 3 isn't falling. So that's about all I got for this game. Next up for the Knicks, 2 straight versus the Bucks at MSG on Saturday and on Christmas Day. So we'll see how that goes. Very interesting game alignment there, facing your Christmas Day opponent 2 times in a row at home, with the first one occurring 2 days before Christmas. It's a bizarre scheduling quirk and just another huge dose of the Milwaukee Bucks for the New York Knicks. Just what we needed. More games against the Bucks. So we'll see how that all goes this weekend. But until then, thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you all soon. Peace out, everybody.